Hello, this is Tiffany Lassue reading for the part of Lois. Oh, Reverend! So good to see you tonight. Researching Vice for the sermon on Sunday? Ah, and Sister Mary Agnes. So nice to see you've made a habit out of getting out of your habit. I'm sure your congregation appreciates your commitment to converting to the heathens. Don't worry. Your dirty little secret is safe with me. It's hardly the biggest scandal the church has ever seen. I don't know why, but I woke up today, made myself a cup of tea, and couldn't help but think about the greatest and most sensational scandal in the history of American politics. Bribes, lies, cabinet corruption. I am, of course, referring to the Teapot Dome scandal. You remember all that jazz, don't you? Of course, you'd have to be living under a rock to not be aware. It was all across the newswires. I myself must have dedicated 24 articles at least to the matter. It has all the workings of a modern-day novella. But as every journalist knows, real life will give you a better story than any fiction. So, our story begins with the Secretary of Interior, Albert Baconfall. I never trust a man who's named after sliced meats. Fall took it upon himself to lease out Navy petroleum reserves at the Teapot Dome in Wyoming to some private oil companies. On the surface, everything seemed just ducky. But you know how it goes. You have a friend in Washington, and competitive bidding goes out the window. Well, the lease terms were, shall we say, very favorable for the private oil companies. Low rates and no competition. And the oil companies were in return generous in their gratitude. Fall secretly became quite a rich man, but the sudden improvement in Fall's standard of living raised suspicions. Follow the money and you'll find the scandal. But Fall covered his tracks. It took a journalist, of course, to smell out a skunk and tip them off. My esteemed colleague, Mr. McGee of the Albuquerque Tribune, broke that story, that lucky devil. Senator Walsh opened up an investigation. Fall was convicted of accepting bribes from oil companies, becoming the first cabinet member to go to prison. Whoever said politics wasn't dirty? Of course, no one was ever convicted of paying the bribes. Those fellows couldn't be found. And it's funny, with all this nonsense, and as big as the whole affair became, Albert Bacon Fall was the only Fall guy to take the blame. Everyone else must have been lily-white clean, right? Must have been. It's hard to believe that we live in a time when politicians could be so corrupt, isn't it? And of course, Harding's reputation was permanently sullied. I'm telling you, if Harding hadn't died just a few blocks away at the Palace Hotel, he surely would have been the second president of the United States to be impeached. Could you fathom? Imagine what they say about us in Europe. The laughing stock of Stockholm. Rather convenient, he died of pneumonia just while this whole teapot began to steam and whistle. Coincidence? I'd say look a bit closer into Harding's dear wife and doctor for the real story there. Look, some people say my line of work is dirty. I only write the stories. It takes someone a hell of a lot dirtier than me to live them out. Well, don't get too blurry-eyed tonight that you can't read the scriptures on Sunday morning. Enjoy your night. How many shadows have darkened the walls of this little room? The remnants of once was and could be lighting the path towards our tomorrow. In a century, no one will know our names. But at this moment, in this time, we are queens and kings and paupers and jesters. We celebrate our victories and suffer our defeats. The seasons continue to change, and we are left only with our stories. A gentle giant standing watch over the door. A woman buttoned up during the day, but an angel of the underworld at night. and then waking up the next morning to find her mouth dry and the wings have disappeared. Forbidden love, failed love, rekindled love. We love like we did a century ago, like we will a century from now. A tragic chanteuse of whose only love is the voice she lost, faded away, eventually forgotten. And the beauty of how her loss gave way that another may find her voice, like a budding flower, a rose, a private yet sentient bartender guarding his heart, and the pair of vaudevillian performers who have only known the circuit but will always have each other. These stories continue on, long before we were born, and long after we will have died. In 90 years, no one will remember our names, but we go on living, seekers of that eternal present. The rider finds a remote spot, a sacred place to observe and be observed. This sanctuary is comforting, she thinks, familiar. This is my tavern, she says with pride. A place of freedom. This is my tavern. Thank you.